All right, so for today, we're going to be learning what we call the 40 special right triangle 45, 45, 90. And for that, I mean about the angles. Now, there's something interesting about the 45, 45, 90. So let me create a triangle. And once again, the 45, 45, 90, I mean that in reference of the angles 45, 45, 90. So for this example, I'm going to create two examples. For the first one, I'm going to give us one of the sides. And let's say I say this side is 5. And then for the other example, I'm going to give the hypotenuse. To make it a different example, let's say the hypotenuse is 7. So I can either give you one of the sides, one of the legs, or the hypotenuse. Now let's work this out. 45, 45, 90. There's two angles that are equal. That means two sides are equal. And those happens to be the two sides that make the 90-degree angle. The two legs. So if one of them is given, I already know the other side is the same thing. So this side is 5. Because two angles are equal, two sides are equal. And the two sides that happen to be equal in this case are the two sides that make the 90-degree angle. Now let's find out the hypotenuse. At this moment, I don't know it. So I'm just going to call it x. And I remember Pythagorean theorem, 5 squared plus 5 squared is equal to x squared. So I have that 25 plus 25 is equal to x squared. So that means that 50 must be equal to x squared. So since x squared equals 50, I'm just going to say that x must be the square root of 50. Now we learn how to simplify radicals. Right? Radical 50, I'm going to split it as two radicals. One of them must be a perfect squared. So two numbers that multiplied equals 50, I'm thinking 25 times 2. So that gives me 5 radical 2. So x equals 5 radical 2. Now let's take a look at what if I give you the hypotenuse. I don't know the other two sides. At this moment, let me call them x. And I'm going to use the same letter because I know those two sides are equal. Remember I said if two angles are equal, two sides are equal, and the two sides that happen to be equal are the ones that make the 90-degree angle. Now, the way I'm going to solve for x, I'm just going to go x squared plus x squared is equal to 7 squared. So that means that 2x squared is equal to 49, right? X squared plus x squared is 2x squared. So x squared, to get the x squared by itself, let me divide both sides by 2. I have that x squared equals 49 over 2. Now let me do the square root of everything. So I have x is equal to 7 divided by radical 2. Right, the square root of 49 is 7, but the square root of 2 I can't simplify. However, we learned that when we rationalize a denominator, remember I used that word, rationalize a denominator means no radicals at the bottom. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to multiply top and bottom by radical 2. So I have 7 radical 2 over 2. So this side right here is 7 radical 2 over 2. And this side right here is 7 radical 2 over 2. Now you guys might be thinking, am I always going to do Pythagorean theorem? Do I have to always use Pythagorean theorem? And no, there's actually a shortcut. That's why this is what we call this a special right triangle, because it has a shortcut. It has an easy way how to work this. Now, if you notice, when I give you guys the side, look, don't you see that number there? So when I give you guys a side, in order for you to get the hypotenuse, you must multiply it by radical 2. Isn't that what I just did? Now, when I give you guys the side, or when I give you guys the hypotenuse, and you're looking for the side, in this case, you must divide by radical 2. Remember, at one point, I had 7 divided by radical 2. When I'm looking for the hypotenuse, I multiply by radical 2. When I'm starting from the hypotenuse, I divide by radical 2. Obviously, you cannot have radicals at the bottom, so you must rationalize. Now, what I mean with that is, let's say I had a 45, 45, 90. Sometimes on your homework, I will just mention one angle that's 45. So I expect you guys to know it's a 45, 45, 90. Since the three angles must add up to 180, I give you 2. Then you should know that the third one is 45 as well. So if I give you guys a side, so matter of fact, let's call this side 8. I know this other side is 8 because those two sides are equal. How am I going to find a hypotenuse easily? I'm just going to go 8 times radical 2. I cannot combine a radical with a whole number, so that's it. Now, starting here, I'm going to do another example. What if I give you guys that the hypotenuse is 9? How am I going to do this the short way? I'm going to say one of the sides is 9 divided by radical 2. I cannot have radicals at the bottom, so I'm going to multiply top and bottom by radical 2. I get 9 radical 2 over 2. For this other side, 9 radical 2 over 2. The work is going to be this simple. So let's take a look at our notes today. For my notes, I have find the missing side lengths. I want you guys to find both of them, the x and the y. For your homework, I'm going to specify exactly which one that I want. I might say give me x or give me y. So for homework, I'm asking for one specific. Here in the notes, I'm asking for both. So if I was asking for the y, I'm dealing with the 45, 45, 90. I'm asking for y. Remember I said the two sides that make the 90-degree angle are equal. So I'm going to say y is going to be 5 radical 2. Now, how am I going to find the hypotenuse? If I'm solving for the hypotenuse, I'm just going to go 5 radical 2, which is what I start with, times radical 2. Remember, in order for you to find a hypotenuse, you must multiply what you start with by radical 2. That just gives me, this 5 is just the 5. Radical 2 times radical 2 isn't that just 2? Right? Because it becomes radical 4, but the square root of 4 isn't that 2? So I'm just going to say my hypotenuse is 10. So if I'm solving for x, 10. If I'm solving for y, 5 radical 2. You might be wondering, how do I type the radical? 5 radical 2. Easy. Let's take a look at number 26. If I'm solving for y, because the two sides are equal, y is 5. If I'm solving for x, I go with the 5 that I started with times radical 2. How do I type the radical? 5 radical 2. Now let's take a look at number 27. I'm starting with the hypotenuse. If I'm solving for v, because I'm going to solve for one letter, I'm going to go forward divided by radical 2. Remember, I'm starting from the hypotenuse, so in this case, I divide. I cannot have radicals at the bottom, so I'm going to do top and bottom. I'm going to multiply by radical 2. So I have 4 radical 2 over 2. If you notice, those two can be simplified, right? 4 divided by 2, I get 2 radical 2. Right? 4 divided by 2 gave me 2. So that's v, 2 radical 2. Now, if I'm solving for u, I'm not going to do the work all over again. I'm just going to say 2 radical 2. Remember, u and v, the two sides that make the 90-degree angle, are equal. Now, how do you type that? You type in 2 rad 2. Rad 2 radical 2. Looking at number 28. If I'm solving for v, that's 3. Because I know the two sides that make the 90-degree angle are equal. So 3. If I'm solving for u, the 3 that I start with times radical 2. So how you type the 3 radical 2 at least? 3 rad 2. That's this. The 3 was just a 3, right? You don't have to type in v equals yada yada or u equals. Or remember, on the homework, I'm going to ask for a side specifically. Now, some questions, let me make an extra example. Some questions are even easier than you think. I might have a 45, 45, 90. And here, let's say I start with the hypotenuse. Let's say the hypotenuse is 7 radical 2. Now, how am I going to solve for one of the sides? I go with 7 radical 2 divide by radical 2. Remember, when you're starting from the hypotenuse, you divide. Okay, don't the radicals cancel out? So that's just 7. The other side is just 7 as well. Next, some of them are even easier than you think.